the Sustained Leadership webinar series. My name is Hana Ben Khalouk. I'm the Executive Director of Sustained Leadership Consultancy, and happy to have today in this weekly webinar a very good friend, a competent colleague, somebody I look up to, Dr. Moosa, who's joining us from Oman to talk about a very, to me, I think it's a very important topic because that's the field that was impacted the most, and that impacted everyone, as if not as an educator, maybe as a student, because we are all going into continuous education, if not, I'm sure as a parent as well. So I was happy to really touch on this topic that everyone can relate to stay a little bit away from the regular business topics that we talk about. And I couldn't find better expert than Dr. Nada to walk us through her experience as an educator, as a parent, as a change practitioner as well. So a very brief introduction of Dr. Nada. She is a health professional educator with 20 years of experience. She's also a certified practitioner of change management and a regular speaker, international speaker, national and international conferences on organizational transformation and change management. And most of all, she has really a talent to share knowledge and really to tell stories about experiences that everyone can learn from. And we're lucky to have her today to walk us through the adaptation or behavioral adaptation that educators, students, and parents needed to go through, having to embrace new ways of doing, as we all of us have to at work, at home, working from home, dealing with the education of kids, or having to be an educator ourselves. So without any further delays, I know that you have a few slides to share with us. So I would love to say the floor is yours, but I think the screen is yours, Dr. Nada. So please go ahead, and I look forward to your insights.
Thank you so much, Hanan. It's a pleasure to be with you all today and to share my personal experience. As Hanan mentioned, I wear several hats. I'm a nurse, I'm an educator, I am a change practitioner, and obviously I'm a parent as well. So juggling these roles from the beginning of the lockdown was quite a few, ride and a continuous journey so far, which I would love to share with everyone and also hear from you. And how are you going and doing so far in this journey? So Hanan, if we can just share the first poll up, please.
Sure.
And I'd like the participants to let us know, depending on once Hanan has the poll up.
Sure. I think second. Yeah. This is it.
Okay. So let's kickstart by letting us know from your experience so far. How was your experience working from home so far? Was it easy? Was it just the same as, being in office, or was it difficult? So if you can just let us know, please.
Okay, so far we have 3 people. Okay, we'll give it 30 seconds.
Sure.
Okay, I think everyone has it. Let's see, we'll end it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, wow, okay. Thanks. That's what I was assuming and expecting. And I'm sharing the same difficulties that everybody was facing, especially that this came in sudden. So it wasn't planned, it wasn't a choice. It was safety and health priorities came first, and accordingly, we just had to suddenly shift without planning. So this would take us to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is depending on technology adaptation, If we can move on, Hanan, to the next one. And I would really like to talk about some of the, if not, many advantages and disadvantages. From my perspective, I think the technology adaptation was a wake-up call. We've been talking about, having the use of technology in education and how blended learning is very important. But when it happened suddenly, there was no choice. We just had to do it in order to continue learning, whether it's school, colleges, universities. So there are obviously many advantages and disadvantages, but I just had to touch on a few, which is some people, again, considering flexibility, comfort, self-paced, and cost. This can also be some, disadvantage, depending on where do you, fit, what is the environment you're in. So if I'm looking at flexible timing, but maybe I'm used to having that routine of having the space of being in office or in school or university. Same thing when it comes to comfort, being at home and having that free time and self-pace. The disadvantage that it really touched us on a global level, not just in the region or on a national level, was we have come to notice, obviously, that not everybody had the online support. Not all teachers had the required training and were tech gurus. In a report of UNESCO, it actually showed that 60% of educators lacked the needful required digital skills to run and engage students, to run these programs and be able to engage the students, let alone that unavailability of the network itself. So again, in the UNESCO, the report showed that you have over 1.5 billion that actually lost, disconnected, because there was no school to go to and they did not have access or connection. And this was really a wake-up call in relation to what do we have in technology that can help us continue learning, and what was missed, and how can we improve based on the fact that this is something that is ongoing. We don't know when it will finish. You have some countries, if you're watching the news, that say they have a second wave, where some of us did not even finish wave number 1. So where is this all taking us? If we can move on to the next, Hanan, please, which is really considering the teaching and learning experience during COVID-19. From my perspective, I think since we had the shutdown, almost 190 countries decided no kids going to school. Universities are, going to shut down as well, just as the same as, many to do with work and organizations. So what did we gain from this experience? I'm not a pessimist. I'd like to be positive, but at the same time, I'd like to be also realistic in how much can be done, what needs to be done, and what is our capacity. So for example, what is done in Oman is, can you duplicate the same, even if it's your neighbor like Hanan in UAE versus in another Arab country or in Europe. We all experienced it at different timings. So understanding what I gained on a personal level, on a community level, and national and then regional, versus what has been lost. And this is really what I wanted to concentrate on today, is what are the losses by not being in a school environment or in a college environment? And these automatically transformed into challenges. My daughter is one of many that used to get up and be like, when is the summer holiday and stuff. Mm-hmm. But since they're back at home in March, one of the things there's like, we were passing by the school one day and she's like, when are we going back to school? Wow. And, obviously I had a smile on my face and I was like, what do you miss? Besides all the complaints that I used to hear, she's like, my friends. Yeah. And the other thing is that my teachers. So this is a challenge that they are going through, besides all the technological adaptation that governments need to handle. So what did we learn so far that we can take with us? And it's also very important to know what are the tools and techniques that are useful. So we need to accept and understand this is all being experimented, and that what works in a specific situation doesn't necessarily will work in another. Another thing is in education, you have many tools out there that you can use online, and but we also need to see, are they custom tailored to the needs in relation to the program, the level of the students? For example, if we talk about little kids, they enjoy the visual stuff, looking at stuff on, TV, or listening to songs on the radio, versus you're looking at universities and higher education. So you cannot say that all size fits all. So this is something that really needs to be considered when we are going through this. And I always like to go back to John Dewey's saying in education, who really considers that the purpose of education is the social interaction and not only gaining knowledge. Because we have come to know that the internet is there, we can get a lot of knowledge over there. But what kind of interaction are we missing by being at home? What is this that not only kids miss, but also us, juggling all these together is really important to understand in a few months if we're planning to go back to school. What are the needs and what are the requirements? If we can move a little bit to the next slide, Hanan, and I don't know how many people felt this way, but definitely I was one of them. And the other thing is, we're still going through this. So what is the engagement and experience? Not just by not being in school. As I said in the beginning, you're an educator, you're a student, you are a parent, whatever it is. But if I only concentrate on the educator, and from my perspective, I think we all became parents, because you no longer, based on your responsibility and your purpose in education, are available during your lecture time or office hours. Students are stressed. Students may have a family member that has been affected by the pandemic, or it might be, something else. Same thing can apply to teachers. So from being happy, and I saw that with many students since I teach higher ed, of not, being in school, even though we have things on time, to really wanting to go back. Mm-hmm. And if you see this curve is, in a way, you're not always going to go to moving forward. It depends on your circumstances, and this is what we need to understand. So maybe I went through it in March, I was able to adapt in April, I got comfortable in May, but in June, I got hit by someone being affected in the family. And then I'll go back. I'll go back to the anxiety. I'll go back to the depression. I'll go back to the frustration of, when is this going to finish? And when am I going to have the one-to-one experience? If I can just share a little personal experience that we went through a few days ago by a death in a family member, and you couldn't hug, you couldn't have that emotional, physical support because you have family members that are over 60, you are from different households. You don't want to feel responsible that you were the reason of some people being, affected. You have some educators that their kids are studying abroad and they couldn't come back. So basically, the engagement and experience is unique to the individual, not just the school, the university, the college, but what I personally am going through is not necessarily something that you went through just because me and you are in the same education system. So understanding that this is a cycle that we are going through, and that is something normal. If we can move on to the next one, please, Hanan.
Sure.
So looking at it as an ongoing reflection, if there's anything that we can confirm with evidence, that access to digital education is not equal. There is no equity, because we know for a fact that not everybody has access. And even if you have access, that doesn't mean it is good access and access of quality. Number of devices required at home, for example, not necessarily you have that. And then looking at also the diversity and inclusion population. It's very important to look at it not as ethnic background over here, or the student's age, but the level, how am I going to include my specific population in relation to the online teaching. So is it custom tailored, or did I suddenly take my face-to-face content, and I put it online, and I implemented it with the same techniques? You are obviously missing engagement. You are missing the students in need. These are all populations that we really need to think of when it comes to equity and accountability of the system towards all those that are supposed to be part of the learning system. So from there, we look at the added value. What is the added value for me on a personal level? What is it on a mutual level? Social as well as functional, the flexibility, the interaction, the engagement. So for example, if I can just leave my office as an educator, grab coffee and have a quick chat with another teacher in another office, that doesn't happen. You can't do that. And we know for a fact that the face-to-face is definitely different than being online. Another thing you need to consider is when we're looking at the social and emotional checkpoints. This is very, very important. So if I can give an example, Hanan, I'm sitting home, I'm in my office at home, same thing with you, everybody else of the participants are at home. This is invasion, you know. I have you in my home.
Right.
And sometimes if you see, many people really don't have the cameras on. Yes. It's like, I don't want you to know where I am, and that's none of your business.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to do it if you have, professional meetings, official ones and stuff. You don't have that choice. So emotionally, how do I feel about it? Yeah. Does there an understanding that, I understand how you're feeling about it? Other times is, do I have the space? So for example, you are invading, but I have the space. I have my office at home. Do others have that luxury? What was considered normal now would be luxury. If you have 5 or 6 kids at home and you are sharing, then I don't have that personal space I had once upon a time. So it's very important to go back to the social and emotional checkpoints. And this is what I really hoped that we come to an understanding today, that it's not just the lack of the digital global gap that is happening, but also the fact that it's very important through all that we're going through. Having the support for the students psychologically, emotionally is important just as much as having it for the teachers. So if I don't have it, I won't be able to give it and share it. And that's a very critical element in the ongoing reflection of what are we doing so far and what else we've done. If we can move to the next one, please. Yep. Okay, so we spoke about feelings, we spoke about adaptation. So let's consider now, what are the requirements and what are the recommendations? So if we look at some of the requirements, obviously this is some of many, but I found those to be critical points, which is the training that is required for both the faculty and the students. Not everybody is a tech guru. We found out a few minutes before from my end, right, Hanan?
Yes.
So we exactly, you know. So and it's an ongoing thing. So every time you want to use a new tool, every time you're exposed to a new app, training is required. And you know, thank God to YouTube. Whenever you know you don't know, you go and check. But the actual training for you to continue the learning process is very important for both ends. And as I said in the beginning, the sudden shift happened that we needed to start teaching. So you're going to have a crash course in the 1 hour, and then you're going to start next day or next week, and you have to be ready. And a very critical point in education is that you have the appropriate online assessment. So the way and the method and how I used to assess students before is not necessarily how I'm going to assess them when I am running a course online. It is totally different. And again, also, what I can do online in some programs, not necessarily I can do in others. So if I can just give you an example between an MBA program and a health program. I have something called lab and clinical practice. So how am I going to translate that when I am going to assess it, you know, online? Obviously, it's not easy. And the most critical thing is how do you get the students engaged and, you know, interacting? So being in class and seeing the learner is different, and you have much more distractors when you're at home. Your phone is next to you, music, you know, a kid walking in, whatever it is. But how can I focus on the needs and requirements while I am delivering? And this is a personal recommendation I put, which I thought, since we're talking about technology adaptation, is use of data analytics in education. Data analytics is actually a way that you gather information while you are going through the learning. So what are the students doing? How many times are they logging in, for example? Are they going on the discussion board? Who is going through the week versus the weekend? Gathering this information just from the organization will help you plan on the spot. So you don't have to wait until a final exam. You don't have to wait until the end of the course to really know the needs, especially that you're not around. So you are actually going on to what is in front of you. There's no that face-to-face interaction. Another useful thing with data analytics, that if it's ongoing, it shouldn't only be in relation to the organization itself, but you can also consider having data from other sources. So you have collaboration. A very simple example I can tell you is some students, their safety place was school. They were in abusive homes. They were emotionally not safe at home. They were looking forward to being in school away from the unhealthy environment. So if we connect the school data with hospital visits, for example, or police reports, you really will be able to see the behavioral aspects and measure the needs and requirements on a personal level, and you're not doing it one size fits all. And this is why I really believe that if we actually start, and I'm sure many did by now, considering the needs, the requirements, the at-risk population, that's very, very important. I put a saying here from a UNESCO report that the Assistant Director General Education said, when we are coming together, we're not only looking at the immediate educational needs, but we supposed to focus on the long-term resilience of an education system. So what are the lessons we learned now from COVID? What do we want to take with us from the past, and what do we want to continue experimenting, not necessarily leaving behind, and seeing if it's going to work, or we need to pause it temporarily and move on? And the second poll, if we can have it up now, Hanan, before we wrap up.
Okay. That's, yeah.
So forget about digital tech support and all of that. If we consider, did your organization provide you with the needed emotional and social support when you needed it? If it's yes or no. Obviously during the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a couple more people who need to vote, if you don't mind. Yeah.
The names won't show, so don't worry. You can be honest.
And we just see how many people are voting. That's all. And then
I think we should have avoided the organization. Did you receive the support required?
No, that's fine. I think because it's anonymous anyway. So still waiting for a couple. Okay, I think some are not. We only have 70% of the attendees who have chosen to participate for this one.
An indicator from me, Hanan, huh?
There you go. Still, I mean, the results are as expected again.
And see, this is why I really wanted today's session to focus on this. And this is the most difficult part. As an educator, sometimes I'd laugh about having 1.5 sentence saying, thank you for your ongoing, support for the students and stuff. And then you get 1.5 page of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And if you need any assistance in relation to helping the students, I think we should go into really looking at what do you need, especially now you're looking at in a few months, we might be going back to schools. We need to understand that going back to schools now is no longer about just health safety. Education is a pillar to get over the pandemic. This is a known. The other thing is that you need an organizational psychologist on board. You need to know these people are coming back from homes. You were not, you might, you didn't connect with them for a long time. Did they lose someone? Did they develop something? Did they get the emotional and social support required? So it's not only having the nurse in school and having the tech support in school, but having them health and mental well-being support. And I'm not talking about a disease, but I'm talking on just, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? How was your experience? And this is the booster that would actually make me feel safe. It's the psychological safety that would actually make me continue. And as we end, I'd like to move to the last slide, this is my motto in life, and this is what I believe in. Everything that we're going through is we grow through it. Good or bad, death or disease. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you will forget it. But what I'm saying is you find opportunities, you try your best to face the challenges, but you also try and grow through it and understand that all what we're going through now is experimentation. So it's okay that we're not getting it right the first time. So I hope this was some added value to the participants, and this is my experience so far. I'm sure there's much more that we're going to experience as we're going to go through the pandemic. So thank you so much, Hanan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neda. Thank you. This was very insightful. And as we are talking about education, I think there was a lot of learning for all of us. And as much as this going virtual in everything, especially in the education, has a lot of positive impact, because it kind of like opened, it's exposed a lot of people, made access more general, everybody more global. Actually, everyone could access education, but at the same time, it doesn't just take to digitize the experience. Just by adding the tool does not mean that the experience is complete. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So thank you very much. And
if I can just add one thing, and just to say that the human factor is not replaceable.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest lesson we can say, no matter what tech is working and all of that, but the human factor is not, replaceable.
Great, thank you. So we can take, if you have a couple of questions, anybody, you can send me in the chat and I'll read them to Dr. Nada, and she'll be happy to answer. So we have Manal, who's saying excellent presentation, well done. So thank you. You have
thank you.
A compliment from one of the attendees. Anybody has questions, we'll just take a few minutes for that, or something you want to add, or a comment that we could share with everyone. It will be great. Other than that, so we'll just thank you, Doctora. I think it was really very helpful, whether for educators
Thank you for having me.
Educators somehow, whether we're educating in the family or we're educating our teams. So, and we are all learners, and we continue to be learners. And I think this pandemic has taught us a lot. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This session will be is recorded and will be available. We'll send it to all of you who registered. And I think we have, thank you, very informative. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you next week with another session on Sustained Leadership webinar series. And have a good evening, and stay safe, and also sane. Mainly stay sane, because that's what we need to really watch out from. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanan.